Mark Etling is affiliate theology teacher with St. Louis University and is teaching a 4-week Bible study on Genesis at the National Shrine of Our Lady of Snows in Belleville. Etling says the weekly presentations give him an opportunity to study the book of Genesis.
Yeah, I really enjoy doing these presentations because I am fascinated with the Bible, for one thing. Second, it gives me the opportunity to do some research into topics that I otherwise wouldn't either have the time or energy to do. So today, or for the next few days, Thursdays, I'm going to be talking about the book of Genesis. If I didn't have these presentations to prepare for, I probably wouldn't spend the time that it takes to do the research into the book of Genesis to really make the presentations worth these people's while.
Judy Williamson is Spiritual Programs Coordinator at the National Shrine of Our Lady of Snows. She says the Scripture Study Group started 6 years ago when the topic was the book of Revelation.
And there's, of course, a tremendous amount of interest in that. That is one that's been in the public eye for a long time. Even people who may not be Christian are kind of fascinated by it. So that was what kind of kicked it off several years ago. But we have really, they've done different, next time we're going to be doing the Gospel of Luke this spring. So they just kind of, Father Tom and Mark decide where they think the interest is and what they can work on. Now in the summer, Mark started actually a church history series, and he's doing Christians in different centuries. So he did the 2nd century and the 3rd century this summer, and I think probably next summer we'll do the 4th century.
Etling says most people are familiar with Genesis because of the creation story in the first few chapters of the book, and of course the story of Noah and the flood.
I think Genesis is, of the books of the Old Testament, is probably the one of those that is most well known to people. People are familiar with the creation story. People are familiar with the story of the fall of Adam and Eve, the first sin. People are familiar with the story of Noah and the flood. They're familiar with the story of Joseph and his multicolored coat. They're familiar with the stories of the sacrifice of Isaac by Abraham, or the near sacrifice of Isaac by Abraham. So, these are stories that we've heard. These are stories that we remember hearing as children. And what I'm trying to do is bring a perspective to these stories that explains them not only in their own context, but in the context in which they were written many, many centuries after they purportedly occurred.
He does not believe that the earth was created in a literal 7 days, but says he is not going to argue with people who do.
The very assertion that a scripture is divinely inspired is in itself a statement of faith. So I don't try to debunk anyone's faith. Okay, now when if people believe that the Judeo-Christian Old Testament is divinely inspired, that's great. I'm not going to challenge that. If they don't believe that, I'm not going to challenge that either, because that's an article of their faith. What I'm trying to do is present as best I can where the scholarship is on these particular stories. So the popular word about the authorship of Genesis is that it was written by Moses. Well, it wasn't. But if people want to say, well, I still think it's Mosaic in tone or whatever, that's fine. But the scholarship is in near unanimous agreement that Genesis and really none of the Pentateuch was written by Moses. Did God actually create the earth in 6 days? No, God didn't create the earth in 6 days, but that's not really the point. The point that the biblical author is trying to make is that God made the earth, and that the earth that God made is good. And why did they need to make that point? They needed to make that point because in the context in which that story was written, namely the time of the exile, there was a belief among the Babylonians, whom the chosen people were captives, that the earth was not a good place. That the only reason why people existed was to please the gods. And so the author of that story, the priestly author of that story, is saying, no, God made the earth, and God made a good earth. It's not just an earth for us to be subservient to the gods.
He says there is usually some interaction between him and the people who come to the talks, which he enjoys. He also welcomes questions.
Those who are here are free at any time to raise questions or to raise other points, and we do have a lot of interaction. And I'm glad of that, because it shows that folks are interested, they're prepared, they want to learn, and we have some really lively discussion.
Williamson says during the past 6 years, the Bible study has only grown in popularity.
They have really been very successful, very popular. I think there's a real need and a real hunger of people who want to learn more about Scripture. We have two excellent teachers, and Father Tom Ovalle and Dr. Mark Etling. So we've been really blessed with having very good instructors who have a very open type of, they create an open atmosphere so that people feel free to talk and question anything they talk about. So it's going really, really well.